The WNBA draft ratings are officially in, and boy, oh boy, do we have some things to talk about.
Let's talk about the obvious. Yes, that presence looming over the women's basketball world. Geno Auriemma, the UConn icon, the king of subtle shade and backhanded compliments. And let's be real, the unofficial president of the anyone but Caitlin Clark Club. His prized player, Paige Bueckers, just had her WNBA draft moment. But unlike the media circus that followed Caitlin Clark's #1 pick last year, this time, crickets, no hype, no headlines, just a quiet night and a cold splash of reality.
For the last few months, the mainstream media, they have tried to convince us that Paige Bueckers is a draw. Me personally, I think she's a star, but I'm not exactly convinced that she is a draw.
Let's call it what it is. Paige Bueckers' draft viewership didn't just fall short, it tanked next to Caitlin Clark's. Yes, 1.3 million viewers is respectable, but when Clark entered the draft, 2.6 million tuned in. That's twice the audience, twice the buzz, and twice the media frenzy. Think that's just a fluke? Then you haven't been watching closely.
Find a lot of stars, but there's only a handful of draws. There's only a handful of people over the past 40 or 50 years who have the impact, the drawing power to elevate the product into the mainstream.
The media's been bending over backward to crown Paige Bueckers as the next face of women's basketball. ESPN's gone all in. Highlight reels, glowing profiles, and plenty of slow-mo Geno Auriemma smirks and post-game sound bites, all to keep the storyline breathing. But let's be real, no amount of UConn nostalgia or carefully packaged coach speak can drown out what the numbers are yelling. Caitlin Clark is the moment.
Whether or not Paige Bueckers is a star or a draw, that remains to be seen. Judging by the ratings for the Dump Diver draft the other night, Paige Bueckers is not a mainstream draw yet. WNBA drew 1.3 million viewers the other night for the draft on ESPN. Now, that number, it can be credited 100% to Paige Bueckers because every other player involved was completely unknown.
This isn't a dig at Paige Bueckers. She's got game, no doubt. But star power? That magnetic force that fills arenas, leads every headline, and owns the airwaves? That's all Caitlin Clark. And those draft numbers? They weren't just metrics. They were a verdict. The basketball world isn't buying the Geno-driven narrative. Look, Geno Auriemma's legacy is bulletproof. More titles than entire franchises. But lately his takes don't sound like wisdom, they sound like the salty remarks of a jealous uncle.
Although 1.3 million is a great number for the WNBA, it is significantly below what Caitlin Clark drew last year. Matter of fact, it's 50% lower than what Caitlin Clark drew last year.
You know the type. Shows up to Thanksgiving dinner with a "that's cute, but back in my day" attitude. That's been Geno and Caitlin Clark for the past 2 seasons. Steady with the side eyes, subtle jabs, and old school flexes.
Great college player, like Caitlin was. The delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's 3rd or 4th in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
He spent 2 seasons downplaying her stats, brushing off her influence, and labeling her fans as delusional. Meanwhile, his prized protege just got outshined by a player who, spoiler alert, didn't need a UConn jersey to become a national icon. The UConn PR machine, still humming, but it's running on fumes. During this year's draft broadcast, the vibe was off. Flat interviews, botched name calls, and an unmistakable sense that everyone was standing in the long shadow of last year's main event.
Yeah. And we are holding it down right now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
It's okay.
Sorry. What?
Go ahead, say your name.
Cheyenne Zellers. I'm so sorry. That is embarrassing. Cheyenne, I apologize, by the way. That's so...
Even veteran broadcaster Tim Wilson didn't mince words, reportedly saying off air that the contrast between this year's draft and last year's was night and day. And he's not wrong. One spotlighted a generational talent who earned the spotlight. The other showcased a player the league is trying to make the next big thing.
NBA draft of all time with an average of 1.25 million viewers with a peak of 1.46 million viewers, up 119% versus 2023. And I know what the question may be, 2023. Well, Ben, just out of curiosity, because we're all curious around here, right? We all want to be well informed. What is it compared to the 2024?
So let's zoom out for a second. Why do ratings matter this much? Because in pro sports, ratings aren't just numbers. They're dollar signs. They drive ad revenue, sponsored deals, media rights, and network priorities. A 49% drop in viewership? That's not just a blip. That's a marketing crisis. That's panic in the boardroom. That's someone at ESPN prepping for a very awkward Zoom call with upper management.
9%. 49% of the audience said, yeah, I'll go watch paint dry instead. In fact, some people, Jason Whitlock, he didn't even realize the WNBA draft took place the other night. He found that out the next morning, that Paige Bueckers and the WNBA draft had actually taken place. Last year, 2.45 million, peaked with 3.09 million, up 307% from the previous high back in 2004.
ESPN and the WNBA spent months hyping Paige Bueckers as the next big thing. The heir apparent, the torchbearer for a new era. They tried to copy the Caitlin Clark playbook, glowing features, wall-to-wall coverage, and talk of another generational moment. But the public didn't bite. And really, why would they? When the original is still out there breaking records and owning the spotlight, who's settling for the imitation?
1,000 from 2004. So 2024 was up 307% from 2004. 1.06 million women viewers was the 2024 draft. Now here we go, folks. This is when we get into the nooks, into the crannies, and into the fun.
And let's not forget social media. As soon as those numbers dropped, Twitter went wild. One viral post summed it up. No Caitlin, no ratings. Another hit the nail on the head. They tried to replace the sun with a flashlight. Harsh? Maybe, but spot on. The public's not confused. They've made their choice. Caitlin Clark isn't just a figure in women's basketball. She is women's basketball right now.
Caitlin Clark was getting drafted. Reason number one, Caitlin Clark getting drafted. Reason number two, why it was such a big deal. Well, Caitlin Clark was going number one overall. And the third reason why, calling a spade here, these three women, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Cameron Brink. Perfect storm. A perfect storm, a perfect bill of...
And that's exactly what's driving. People like Geno Auriemma up the wall. It must sting, right? Spending decades crafting the most iconic brand in women's college hoops, only to watch a player from Iowa step into the spotlight. Caitlin Clark did what no one outside of UConn has. Managed in years, she turned women's basketball into a must-watch event. She made regular season games headline news, filled college gyms like NBA arenas, and did it all without Geno's endorsement. In fact, she did it despite the constant side-eye from people like him.
Point exactly. They still haven't rebounded from the days of 2004. They still haven't managed to maintain that same audience from 2004. Until Caitlin Clark showed up. Until Caitlin Clark arrived on the scene, and then they're going to boast about a measly 1.25 million. You guys want to know what's funny about 1.25 million? 1.25 million is closer to the 601,000 in 2004 than it is to the 2.45 million in 2025. We're already closer to 2004 numbers than we were to 2025.
This entire saga underscores the real issue. The WNBA and its media partners are still holding on to outdated playbooks. They think they can just press a new face of the league button and expect fans to fall in line. But here's the thing. You can't manufacture charisma. You can't create gravitational pull. And Caitlin Clark has both in spades.
Disappeared. 1.2 million people, to be fair, disappeared. We can spin that as many ways as we want. The trend is already coming back down. The trend is already coming back down. Juju Watkins next year draft, 1.09 million. Oh, another 1 million view draft. But we went from 2.4 to 1.2 to now 1.09. Who's after Juju? My point exactly. We're already forecasting a 2027 draft of 650,000.